Can you hear that?
Oh yeah.
I can't hear you, man.
You can't hear me?
Oh shit. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine. I can hear you. And my mic should be fine. We were working before just fine. Now I don't hear you.
Now you hear me.
I hear you.
All right, cool. Sorry about that. I'm Brice Hancock, and this is Mile High Recovery Chat, and we're here with Static. And anyone that knows me knows this is a big deal to me. I'm super stoked to have you. So you guys, I'm so stoked because I loved your band. I owned a club, a music club. So I saw you on Instagram, and you put up a post about being in recovery, and I said you guys played my club back in 2010.
Yep.
And I remember it vividly. For me, it was like a really big deal to have you guys play my club because I loved your band so much, and I'm just a huge fan, And I said, I don't know, I was like on a whim, I was like, would you come do my podcast? And you were like, sure, totally, anything for recovery, right? And so I'm just really happy to have you. So you're in recovery.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in recovery. You identify as an alcoholic?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely identify as an alcoholic at this point. Just being around a while, I was able to understand right away it's in here, and it's the ism. So 9 years into this, it's the ism I keep watching out for, because I do realize now that can manifest
sure
pretty easily anywhere. So.
Sure. And so what you're talking about is like removing substances that's just part of it, right?
Yeah, that was like the door that let me into it. And then I realized there was a psychopath inside me trying to kill my spirituality like every day. So
right. Yeah, I get that. So I do know a little bit about you. You're from New York, correct?
In anywhere else in the country, people would say they're from the closest major city. So it would be New York City, but I'm actually from New Jersey.
Okay.
Suburbs of New Jersey that are 25 minutes, 30 minutes from Manhattan are very much New Jersey. And people from New Jersey will say, yeah, I'm from New Jersey, even though you could drive to New York quickly. But it is state of New Jersey. So
yeah. And for people that don't know, like if you work in New York, a lot of people, they live in Jersey and they work in the city, right?
Yeah, it's just like anywhere. You meet someone, they say from Atlanta, and you take a ride to their house and it takes you an hour to get there. And you're like, you're an hour from Atlanta. But just right. New York City is unique because it's not really in the middle of New York State. It's next to New Jersey with Connecticut here. So we're really the New York metro, which is all these areas. So.
And so when I was a kid, I used to go to Massachusetts, Camp Butternut. You know Butternut? It's like a ski resort up there in Massachusetts.
Not really that well. I was not really a winter sports kind of person.
So. All right. Well, no, I would go to summer camp, and there was a bunch of kids from New York City. And so I had some friends in New York City when I was a little kid, like 8, 10 years old, and would visit New York City. And I just remember being so blown away. Now, but you kind of got your start as a musician in the city, correct?
Yeah. So when you live in that area of New Jersey, you're pretty much feeding off New York life. Just like you said, people who work in Manhattan live in the suburbs of New Jersey. So your goal, if you're like saying, I want to make it, you get a band and you head right to the city and play that club scene, because New Jersey didn't really have a club scene. I'm only 44. So by the early 90s, mid 90s, New Jersey was all just entertainment. Nothing against it, but it was all cover bands and tribute bands, and people were going out for quick beers and entertainment. New York City is where you went for the art.
Right. And so you ended up playing in bands and you worked in a studio.
Early on, I worked in a music store, believe it or not. That was the parent company of the music store was actually a major distributor. It's American Music Supply, the catalog and the website, but they had a store that the father of the guy had called Victor's House of Music, and we were like the super boutique-y cool store, I guess. And
is that street that has like it's all music stores, like the whole block?
No, that's actually super cool. That's in Manhattan. We were still very much New Jersey. My whole life is really in the suburbs of Jersey. You're close enough, you don't really have to leave. But the music store was a big highway store. It was like the first real Pro Tools store, the first big Gibson custom shop in the 90s. Like it really grew with the times. So. So.
All right. And so that's where you met, is that where you met Jimmy Necco?
Yeah, that's where. So I was in a band. I was always in random bands, and I was this like crazy kid in his 20s who loved playing with delay pedals. And I think somebody in the guitar department, I think Jimmy was looking for some kind of effect, and they go, go talk to Static. It actually wasn't my name then. My real name is Vincent, so they're probably like, go talk to Vinny or something. And I just loved talking to him. We just really connected on so many different kinds of music. I had no idea what he did, what his music was like at the time at all. He was just a really wonderful, he still is a very wonderful person. It's a wonderful person who loved music and delay pedals. And we just talked about stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, I guess he was coming in there for like maybe 6 months to a year. And he's like, I'm playing this coffee house. Come check it out. At that point, he told me, music was a real thing for him. And I had the idea that he was making records and that stuff. But I still didn't really hear him yet. And then I went to this coffee house and I saw him. He was just like, he would use the coffee house to air out songs. Like it was kind of like almost unannounced, but it was like this, everybody in the area was there. And I was absolutely blown away. I couldn't even describe, prior to hearing what he did with songs and his voice, I could never have said that's something that existed. And then he did it. I witnessed it. And my mind was like, I don't think I could play with another singer unless I play with someone like this or him. And then that was kind of like the beginning of it. And then he was just coming into the store and just a great person.
So that was my impression of him too. It's like, just like kind of like this next level talent and like his voice, right? Like the first time that I heard it was the album Mercy. Is that the name of the album?
Yeah, and that's a later album. That's actually funny. Right. That was the first one I got to be on. That's when I finally joined the band.
Well, that's when I first heard it. And the first two notes, I was just like, who sings like that? Like, how do you sing like that, right? And
yeah, it's mind blowing, and I'm doing like a really good job, like pull myself back in time, not like for a second to say like I saw this man sing and he blew my mind. Fast forward a few years, I got to spend 16 years on stage, off and on, listening to this. And he's like a brother. We're brothers now, but when he still sings or I hear the music, it's like I don't know anybody like that. And I would always crank my monitor. My monitors were pretty much his voice and hi-hat on stage. I would just want to get barreled by it because it guided. It's just the whole wave.
It's super intense music, and like your playing was just badass. There was like lots of effects, lots of echo, and it all fit together perfectly. And then his voice was just like right on top, right? And it was heavy, and it was emotional, and kind of poppy, right? But not in like almost not a happy sort of way. Like there was a lot of passion to it, but is what I'm trying to say. But it's like when you guys played the Toad, and if you're playing the Toad, it's not like, it wasn't like a great club, right? It had an okay sound system, and but you guys approached it as if it was Madison Square Garden,
yeah.
And you guys were so intense, man. Like I don't think, you probably don't even remember it, but I remember it.
When you said the name, now I remember it. And I remember the 2008 show specifically. In the 2010, that's starting to come back. This is all sober. Not that I didn't drink on stage. I don't want to give anybody the wrong idea. Like I do identify as an alcoholic, and I faced my issues and I saw them. But the band is a very professional environment right from the beginning. It's all about getting on stage. We're there to serve the audience. We're not going to destroy what has been created. And mind you, he was around a long time before almost every person you saw on that stage, maybe except for one, all came after. He's already built so much. The reputation, the integrity, and the giving. And the music is so, like you said, intense because it's so in touch. It's so spiritual. It's such a connection that the only time I felt alive and felt really, really good is when we were playing. So that's like made me feel like that's where I am. So I know this is about recovery. So just to quickly say that my drinking and all my partying always happens around that, after. So stage was very sacred, and in that particular band, incredibly sacred. And you said we came in like we're like an arena, and that's something. This is all the kind of stuff that I learned. I was younger than Jimmy, not by a lot, but like I was the newer guy coming from the music store, and I learned a lot really quick. And it was all about that professionalism, the integrity, and this show is just as important as if we get to the Garden, all those shows are important are just the same. No arrogance about it. It's more like just the professionalism and the details. And that's something that I'm so grateful to ever be around someone like that and have those lessons forever.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just crazy good. And you guys were so like just creative and like in the zone. Like and it's kind of like like there's certain singers you see like you know, like when I met Perry Farrell and and you just see him and you're like, that dude's intense, right? And I got the same vibe from Jimmy, like wow, he was intense, right? And but you guys were very well behaved. I don't recall you guys being out of control.
No.
So let's start getting into that. Like when did that become a problem? What was that like?
So yes, we were very well behaved. I mean, we're just we're a bunch of good, well-raised boys and one young lady that was on the road as part of the family as well.
Right.
That we believed treating everybody the best we could, and we didn't have the rock star attitude in that sense. And we also grew up in New Jersey, that kind of New York area. So you have that kind of, I don't say streetwise, but we're just kind of grounded in a different way. But anyway, so I, even before I joined the band, and I was like 25 by the time I joined, there was a moment in my early 20s that I started running away with it. So if you want to flash back all the way real quick, I could think back to being 7 years old and feeling like, 4,000-year-old alien in this little kid's body. I never really felt quite in place. And I didn't have like a traumatic upbringing. I grew up in a really nice town, and, my family was together. All the things that could work were there. Everything was in my favor. But, I didn't feel I couldn't connect well in certain ways. I didn't socialize well with other kids. I loved talking to adults. I was very happy if I was either listening to a lecture or stacking blocks for 2 days straight. And then as I started going through school and I got to like high school and I was having so many struggles in my schooling, they tested me and also they tell me, they use the word learning disabilities. I came back with, I have a difference in a learning ability. So I was already kind of a little smug about it. And that got me frustrated because I never felt like I was ever connecting with the traditional education system, et cetera, et cetera. A little before that high school frustration, about sixth grade, is that famous story, like, where'd you find your first drink? Me and my friends found beer in the woods. It's like a movie. It's like a scene right out of a movie. There was like a case hidden in mulch in the summer, which we know even if you like drinking, you're not going to be drinking. You shouldn't be drinking warm beer in the summer. I remember tasting it and feeling like electrified. And I had that feeling, that immediate sensation. Thankfully, within that time, I also discovered music, and I felt electrified just playing my instrument without the need for anything to blur it. So during all of high school, to kind of move quick through this, I was always in bands, always playing. And when I would play, I'd be super happy. I wasn't stage fright. I was confident, but it just seemed like drinking went with music. So I just started picking up pace in high school. Nothing that would have been like the writings on the wall yet. And as you know, when we work recovery, we can see the writing now. We learn to see the writing at 2 years old if we really want to peel the layers back. But in high school, I wasn't on anybody else's radar. Early 20s, started playing the New York scene a little bit, having a lot of fun, and just partying a little too much. And I do have a very specific memory. It was like 2001 that it got a little out of hand then. And it was not a cover band, I'm sorry. It was an early band I was in. And we had this drummer who wasn't drinking. He was like an older guy. And I was listening to him talk about stuff and like, maybe I'm moving too quick. So I took a pause for like a year, and I didn't really think of it. And then now keep going forward. I'm in the band. The work comes first, the music comes first, the band comes first. And so I was never really out there, but I did get incredibly wise advice from Jimmy. And sadly, I didn't listen to it fully, but he always reminded me that, and all of us, that being on stage, you're going to come off and your body is going to want more. And just like chill out a little bit, go get a snack and breathe before you think about whatever you're going to encounter for the rest of the night. And I already, now thinking back, my mind was already predisposed for, chasing the dragon, I guess, whatever they say, the whole time. So once I came off stage, now I'm riding up here. Now I'm thinking like, well, how else can I keep pushing it? So after shows, I party, but I was also in my 20s. I was also in really good health and shape. So I didn't wake up that bad. And then as the years go on, the mornings get rougher and rougher. and then I'm a little crankier, and then I'm a little more hungover, or then there might be a 3 or 4 day bender and a bunch of days off, or I experience altitude for the first time where you were. I remember being so tired at first. Now I remember the first time I was at the Toad. I do remember the JBL Eon monitors specifically in the corner stage. And I was feeling the effects of me deciding to drink way too much beer, because I think we were staying at a friend's house in Boulder.
You were.
Like brewery that was around there, that Sandstorm, whatever it was, like fancy beers, like really strong, and just being kind of like, this feels awful. And then I probably got through. I probably had like 2 energy drinks or something. We played a show, and I probably went straight for the bar after. And what happens with that is, on the road, except for a few moments and in the constant like low level partying, it's when I came home. Now you're not excited anymore. Now there's no tour schedule. There's no next city. There's no setting up. There's no like cracking that first chord and sound check where you don't think about anything else when you hear the amp light up. When I would get cut home, then I would overdo everything. We wouldn't rehearse as much maybe, and then I have like a week off, and you just go find the wrong people. So that's where I think my disease or alcoholism becomes the truth of who is inside of me, of that I have a problem, because as I keep saying about how much love I have for the band and the people, these really are the greatest people I've ever met in my life. Like, these are my family. And there's times there's lineup changes, et cetera, throughout the years. But every person that's ever been in the band is still part of a family. I think once we played in LA, and every member, past and present, happened to be there at some point. And within a night, like 12 people cycled through the stage.
That's cool.
And he describes it this way. It's like, that's what the O is. That's the hours. That's what, if you want to come back and there's a space, like the whole thing, it's like, there's always like that feeling. So these are people that mean the world to me. But if we were rehearsing and everybody went to bed at 10 o'clock back home, I'd be like, well, I'm still awake. Let me go find some trouble to get into. And then you're at bars and you think you have friends, and they're not, maybe not your friends. And then the people that are kind to your friends at bars, that bar closes. Then I realize, well, there's a 3 o'clock bar in the town I live in. Now, I can tell you for a fact, there's nobody I ever met in that 3 o'clock bar between 2 and 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
Knowing their name or had any that cared anything that ever happened to me.
Right.
And so no one really knew what I was doing, because I would leave the main core like, you had a good night. We had fun, right? We had a few drinks. Great. But then I would just keep pushing. And then other substances came in near the end in my 30s where, and the reason I still identify as an alcoholic is because I just took whatever I can to keep drinking.
Yeah.
So I got into speedy things, or if I wanted to do coke or whatever, if that was floating around, it was because I knew I could drink for a few more hours. It wasn't like I woke up in the morning and said, like, I love cocaine. It's that I like being awake. So I am a hyper type personality. I do like caffeine and coffee, and I like going up in general, but I didn't like seek that until I knew, well, I could party till the AM. Or bad decisions, hanging out with people too young. Not that age matters, but if you're hanging out with partiers that are in their early 20s and you're now 33, you're running with a different pack. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where I excelled. That's the progression, really. There was like one other break I had when we were making Mercy. We were living in Los Angeles. We were getting to be in Rick Rubin's that Chili Peppers mansion everybody talks about. And I remember
there. That's his house, right? Wow.
It's the house they use for studios. It's not his house where he lives in.
Oh, okay.
But that's where the movies, shows. And I remember waking up every morning, like just pinching myself, like this is everything I dreamed of. And I want to be aware for all of it. But then it wasn't a progressed disease yet. So I just stopped drinking and had a great time. We made a record and I felt really great. And 9 months later we were home and I'm like hanging out. I'm thinking, I could do something, because I didn't know what problems were yet. I didn't know progression. I didn't know disease. I didn't know what recovery was. I just knew I got to clean my body out. But now at 33, that's when it became. I think I want to pause now, because I feel like you should probably ask a question or something. Or if you want me to hit it, I could get real. I just don't know if I'm supposed to tell the story like I'm qualifying.
No. Well, I mean, it's a chronic. You're saying it's a chronic disease. It's progressive. It starts one way. Like, for me, it was fun at first, and then after a while, it was no longer fun. It was no longer funny, and
good one. No longer funny.
And similar, because I was, I don't know, an alcoholic from the get. And then I got into harder drugs in Baltimore, but I wanted a music career. And so when I moved to Colorado, I was sort of able to dial back hard drugs. And then I ended up buying the Toad, and I just drank. And I thought that if I could just stay off of drugs, I would be fine. And I wasn't fine. My alcoholism got really, really, really bad. And so when you were on the road, you would get up and you guys go to the next gig, and you had that to look forward to every night playing, right? And you'd be present, like you said, when you hit that first chord, you're there, right? You're not thinking about anything else. Off the road, you're back in your head, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Off the road or after a show for me or anything like that, you're home and you're just not. And I'm starting to realize there's more and more to it. Like some of us are just designed that way. The people that really done this for a long time, like we really light up by touring. It's like we're hunter gatherers minus the needing to hunt and gather anymore. Like we're just designed for nomadic life. If it's either forever or for a good portion of your life, like it's like kind of where our heads live.
Yeah.
I'm starting to learn more about that now. Actually, I get that near the end of this, but it's something that drove me. But when I was home and I feel like nothing's going on, you lose that sense of accomplishment. Things become weird, and then partying just seems easy. But I was also doing it because, and again, this is not a negative response. I really loved everything about my life at that point, and there was nothing craving for a home life. I didn't have zero craving to have an address, to have a house, to live anywhere, because we were. And we still are. And I'm saying we because as the family unit of that band, those are incredible human beings that if they needed me to do anything like real life stuff, like I need help, I'm always going to run. And he's the same way. And when we were touring and making the music, that's exactly where I always wanted to be. It was never a confusion. So in my warped thinking, I'm like, well, the key, I always kept it going. And I was always joke around. Like I would come home from tour and like I looked like I was still on tour for months. If we were in between, like I just kind of kept in some sort of pace, and thankfully we rehearsed a lot and recorded, and we were always together. And then I would go out and I acted the same way. Like I didn't think any different. And you live as if, and that's who I was. That's who I am in certain ways. But in my early 30s, now we're getting into less length of tours, and I had more time to myself, so I would just screw around more. And I remember we were doing, I think it was an acoustic tour for his solo record. That's probably when we came through in 2010, maybe. I can't remember exactly what year. And that year, we weren't going out as much. I wasn't living well. I wasn't really happy with the stuff I was doing at home. So I would just be waiting when we go on the road. It's like, okay, we're going to go on the road. This is great. And kind of build up for that and then be all right. And then get home. And then it's like, I had a crappy, at that point, I was like, I was just making bad decisions. I was in crappy relationships because I just thought if the relationship wasn't really that serious, I wouldn't get serious and I could just leave. So you just pick bad people. And then at some point I met somebody when we were on, I met someone that I was starting a new relationship with, and we were about to start recording a record in, I guess, Hudson, New York. And I was dating a musician woman from California, and she had her whole life together. She was all in zone. And we were a few months in, and a few times we would drink and she would look at me because I didn't stop. Right. That's the thing. I'm since I said I am an alcoholic, I'm pretty sure people know what that means. It's not what there's very different definitions of it. Mine wasn't every day in the end. So mine was never, I was so lucky. I never had a physical dependency on anything.
Okay.
But I was able to start painting the behaviors. In the last 5 months of my drinking, I was worried with this in this relationship. So this person was also, besides being a musician, was a health food chef. I did a cleanse. I realized I was allergic to gluten and fake sugars. My body started feeling better. I felt great. And then I wouldn't drink for 2 weeks, but then I would drink, and it was like I was drinking like a college kid. Nothing against college kids who drink, but there's that term. And I never went to college. I have no idea what it is to be a boy. I'm just guessing when you're doing upside down keg stands, there's certain bingy excess. Then I'm doing that. And then overdo it for 3 days. And then I'd be not do it for 2 weeks. And near the end, it got super crazy. And she kind of looked at me and says, I didn't sign up for this. I think you have a problem. Maybe you should look at it. So I looked at it and I put it down. And I went on my own for 11 months, completely dry. Things got better, but then I realized there was a brain, and the brain was the source of all this and all my behaviors and the way I responded to things, how I acted and being anxious and this whole, I just wasn't happy. During that 11 months, we were on the road within the first two. We were doing a tour with Peter Murphy. Ooh. And There was a lot of people on the tour, super exciting. I was back in shape. I felt really good to be there. And we're back together, you know, the band, the family, we're on the road. Just, nothing's wrong. And then I meet a guy on that tour when I guess it was happening. One of the first shows, I kind of just retreated. I guess where I used to be straight for the bar, I kind of found a corner. I had my bottle of water. I probably had some like Raisinets or something. And he's like, "Oh, you don't party?" I'm like, No. He's like, "Oh, I got like 5-6 years." He's like, "Want to go to a meeting tomorrow?" And I was like, I never really thought about that. I'm like, I don't think it's that bad. He's like, okay, that's it. Every day, then he would come back. He would talk to me for like 30 minutes. And he started to check in with me every day, giving me some sort of structure, saying things to me. And I don't talk. And then, like, you know, there's different methods of recovery for everybody. There's certain 12-step programs that are more well known than others. But the one I decided to belong to, that's what he was helping me with. He was trying to 12-step me. And he was just talking to me about stuff, and he kept me in structure. At the same time, the relationship I was in, there was a lot of musician friends of hers that she exposed me to in Los Angeles that lived a very sober life that seemed like their life was well. And one of them, we already befriended each other. And about 6 months into this, I call him. I'm like, man, I'm feeling so good. I'm playing the best I ever played. Like, I'm so connected to everything, but I don't ever want to drink again. Is that possible to like not like sound? It's funny when I'm saying it because it sounds so like I obviously knew nothing. He did the best thing he could ever done. He sent me some literature from the particular 12-step program that I'm still part of now. And he says, read this. And he goes, before you read that, I want you to think about things. I want you to think about, do you think like the person that you're reading about? Do you feel like the person that you're reading about? And do you feel like you drank like the person? And are you as hopeless? If you're faced with the idea of drinking again, are you as hopeless that you could not? And I read it, and it meant I was like, whoa, but I still didn't follow through. And about 11 months in, I got to be in a recording studio with a bunch of really people that are still close to me now that work a great program, that have a lot of time. And I looked at them and I said, hey, I got a question for you guys. I know you don't drink anymore, because the key is I keep saying things like, now I'm saying you don't drink anymore. But in my mind now, I realized when I stopped drinking, I started living. That's the recovery version of me. But prior to that, I thought you were taking something. I had to give up something.
Right.
Give up nothing. I gained everything. So they said, I go, yeah, when beer's on TV, do you ever feel like you want it? They're like, no. They're like, do you do anything about this, or are you just not drinking? And I'm like, I guess I'm just not drinking. And that next day I came back to New Jersey, and that's when I found an actual functioning program of recovery, which to me is basically a way of living. And I'll stop there for now.
It's interesting. And I want to back up a little. Like, my definition of an alcoholic, and a lot of people think it means you're under a bridge, you have 5 DUIs, all this horrible stuff. I believe that, because like my father will have a beer and that's it. He'll leave half a beer. I've never left half a beer. When I have one sip of beer, something happens. This phenomenon of craving takes over, and I just want more. And it doesn't matter if I just have one drink. If I drink one night a month, I'm drunk, right?
Yep.
To me, that's alcoholism, is what happens when you put a sip of alcohol in your body. And that's kind of like the truest definition that I can give somebody. I had to be really beaten up. But similar to your experience, I didn't really want to quit drinking, like never, you know what I mean? Like not ever even have a beer, but I started to see people that were happy, and I mean really happy. And I was like, I want that. Like, I want that, right? Mm-hmm. And they all said the same thing. You got to do this thing. You got to work this program, right? You got to work the steps. And I didn't until I was miserable enough to do anything. And I had a really bad relapse and ended up in a psych hospital. And I got out of there and I was willing to do anything, right? And I'm grateful because, like, I had no idea, like, that you're right. It's the way I acted and the way I reacted to life. Every time it was like all about me. They're coming at me. I'm the victim, right? And I don't think like that anymore. I've had this total shift. There's internal shift. I don't think like that anymore, right? And at some point, and I'm sure you might have experienced the same thing, I was okay with myself. Like, as long as I follow my moral compass, I'm comfortable in my own skin. I don't have to apologize for things. I don't need to defend myself anymore. I don't need to justify myself anymore. I take responsibility for my life and my emotional happiness. And when that happened, my future opened up, and I feel like I've had two lives. And I wanted to ask you this, because you were a rock star, and did you have to, like, because I gave music up. I wasn't experiencing joy from it anymore. I had to reinvent myself. And you've kind of reinvented yourself a little bit, right?
Well, yeah, and you can say in certain ways. I mean, I was still functioning with the band and sobriety for years, and that just made that better. That just made it more real, and I was able to understand fully then, like I said, how professional Jimmy is and how the band is and how everybody, that I was able to actually feel like then I'm actually now really part of that part of it. Like I am not being as selfish with some of my behaviors, and I was really clear, and I was able to be super aware of everybody else and be as helpful and as useful as I could be. I remember someone told me when I went on my first tour, remember, be useful, not self-important. Pause, like all these amazing tools that the program could only give me. And then during that time, when I had now my off time, instead of running around with the worst people you could possibly want to hang out with, you have all this extra time because you're not getting wasted on your off time. You're doing so. I learned the gifts of sobriety have given me I sat there and I was like, I got Pro Tools within like the first month. I started learning that. And I'm like, I love synthesizers. I learned any piece of technology. My quest for wanting to learn knowledge and then be available for others. I'm part of an organization now since 2013 called Road Recovery. It's no secret. The people who created Road Recovery in the 90s were also part of the management team for Ours and Jimmy. And then off and on during a career, be major parts of the band, of the team. And we would support them. Jimmy was always like, oh, they need us for something. We got to go do something. He's like his family as well. Anybody who comes into that fold, if you go in there with an open heart, and you want to be true to the music and the cause and the friendship that you'll get from being around Jimmy and the band, everybody's part of family one way or another. Even if it's the management team, it's family. So they were called Road Recovery, and we've helped them in the past. And now we were playing with Peter Murphy. It was the second time we went out a year later. Now I have a program behind me. I was already like 14 months sober. I felt so much better to be on the road. I wasn't with body armor, and I wasn't freaking out, hiding coffee in case I needed coffee. I was just like, well, I'm just not going to party. I went to the founder and I said, listen, I have 14 months. A lot of things changed. And you're like, what? And they had me come down to their program. So Road Recovery, real quick, is a quick definition it's an organization, nonprofit, that's based upon music industry professionals that have openly faced their adversities, found a way to get through it, and then are able to be vulnerable and humble enough to help another. Usually, and in most part, it's at-risk youth and young people. And then, yes, a lot of the people, the story might be alcoholism or addiction, but there are other people that it could just be how they dealt with anxiety. How do you deal with an eating disorder? An adversity is an adversity. So the young people we work with aren't necessarily drugs and alcohol. And during this time, since 2013, I remember like 4 years into it, I'm with Gene, and I look at him, I go, you know what? That whole thing I keep talking about, those learning disabilities, I'm like, that shit's really still digging at me. And I realized my connection with young people isn't always this story of my being on the road in the rock band. They like the fact that you're a musician because there is music connected to the program. But my alcoholism and the addiction part was that a big root of it is my frustration still with the school system. And it was a wall for me, and it's an adversity I have to work through. And I was able to be open and connect with young people that way. So at this point, I spend a lot of time, and at this point, I'm doing it almost all the time. I still do music and I still do the creative side, but we do a lot of time working with young people, and this is something I know we immediately could relate on because you're in the world as well. This kind of thing just only has reward because you're able to help another and you're able to use the lessons. And there's a difference between service and then being in the service life. So as long as I'm doing the altruistic covert service that I learned in the program, and then I add on these service type professions, I can't think of a more balanced, beautiful life.
Yeah, and I did speak with Gene, and he's amazing. and he told me the mission, and like it sounds like he's helped just a lot of kids. But I went through that. I was 2 years sober, and I had this like moment, and yours was at 14 months. It's like I was like, what? Like, who am I as a sober man? Like, there has to be more than just getting a job and paying bills until I die. And I wanted to be around people in recovery because there's like an authenticity that you might get in a band or around creative people. I get it around people in recovery because we have to be honest or we die, right? We drink again, and being of service and helping other people is its own reward.
Yes.
I didn't know I was going to have a new career. I really didn't know. I didn't think like I'm going to start a treatment center. I just opened one sober house thinking I'd be able to pay the mortgage on it. And it turned into this whole thing. But I was depressed, and then I started doing this, and then my depression lifted, and it just filled me up. And I'm still filled up by trying to help people get what was freely given to me and to you.
I agree.
Yeah. And so what else? Like, you sounded like you were pretty healthy and fairly spiritual, even as a drinker. I was not. I was very unhealthy, and I had no sense of spirituality.
Yeah, I would say, like, I guess I'm more hard on myself just to keep a good tight grip on the amount that's being humble every day, one day at a time. I have another friend that says, let's play small ball with it. If I get to bed that night, we had a good day. Yeah, there definitely was some health and spiritually fit, but I don't think any of that would happen if I wasn't in the band I was in.
Yeah, okay, I get
that. That's not a band you get in and your whole purpose is, this is not a partying band. It's not a prude band either, and there's normal people. These are normal people that could pick a night and have a good night out, party with their friends, but then stop at 4 or 2 or 1. I wasn't. But I was still around that, and the love and the support and being spiritually fit and looking at everything from all angles and being available and being open with others, like that was all happening during that time anyway. But then every time I always say I would take my detour and I had to like crawl back, not crawl back like nobody wanted me back, but I had to like rebuild myself. And then when I got sober, still being in the band for years, it was really like a moment like, now I get it. Now I fully get it because it's every day like this. Now I feel reliable. I feel consistent. This as a musician standpoint, even if you're not drinking on stage and you're kind of clouding yourself from show to show, there's those moments where you feel like you have a really good show, but then you might have like one of these.
Yeah.
I think, besides a good rehearsal regimen, by me cleaning up, I was able to be super consistent, available, and the most important thing, be of service, to the music that somebody else created. That's an incredibly important part. I joined an existing concept, an existing band with an incredibly prolific songwriter who still has a great vision. There's a record coming out in 2 days.
Yeah.
So, and I got to hear it within a week ago, and I was like, all I can say is, like, you did it again. Like, and I'm excited about every record I was on. I'm excited about every record prior that I heard. That's where we fell in love with the music and what he did and whoever the unit was. And this one has like a double thing for me because there's still remnants of stuff I was a part of because I stepped back like a year or 2 ago. And then there's some of this crazy stuff coming out. It's like, this is amazing. And all I could feel as a sober person who still practices humility, I learned something. I could celebrate others. And I think as a non-sober person, even making a decision that you might have to step back from a situation like a job or a band, and it's like and everybody still cares for each other, a non-sober person could still create this resentment, this ugliness. They could rewrite the story the wrong way. Like, right. I knew my role in that band. I knew what I was doing. I knew what I agreed to do. I knew, I'm a part of something that's way larger than I could ever be. There's times I could contribute a lot. There's times that I was showed what to play. And there's times on stage that I enjoyed sometimes the parts that I was playing that he played on records because that was my challenge. Can I play like him? That kind of thing, and vice versa. Yeah. So now I can celebrate. And every time he does something or a record comes out or a post goes up, I'm just super happy that I was a part of my life. And that comes from, working a program like this and just being okay with myself. Okay with who I am and being of service for others. But we could be of service of everything we do in this life. I learned so much of that being in the band, and I said it made clear after. You know, Jimmy was the type of guy that he never missed a door when someone was coming in. He never not said hello to someone behind the counter when he was ordering food. He's a very unique person in that sense. He was like a wise grown up, I guess, as a teenager, even though he's youthful and somehow doesn't age. He's the greatest shape of anyone I ever met. He had this, he knew it was going around like a 360.
Yeah, he has that vibe, that old soul wise vibe.
But super alert. Like there could be a person walking in from the back of the building with a bunch of boxes, and somehow he would know they would need the door to be opened.
Huh.
And with me working a program and becoming sober, like I feel like I could be like that now. And that's who I am today. But I wasn't I was learning to be like that by his and everybody else's example.
So it's cool. You've been able to like step back. Like your identity isn't just as a member of ours. Your like sense of well-being comes from inside, and you're happy for the new members of ours, and you're not jealous, and you're not resentful, and you want to see them succeed, and it would make you feel good to succeed, right?
I want everything best for them. And the newer members that I got to be with near the time I needed to step back. It was a crazy year too. Like my father died, and then I think my best friend got into an accident. The one best friend I had outside of the band, really, even though I met him through the band, he was all of our friends. He got in a bicycle accident 11 months later and died. And like my life was just in a different regroup. You know, I was about 43 at the time, and for me, I needed to change some stuff. You know, some things in sobriety do come up. I actually, at that point, I do enjoy having an address, and maybe I wanted to do some different stuff. And I got to play with everybody, I think, for almost 16, 17 years, every carnation. I love them all. And this new particular lineup to me, and I'm blown away by them. I got to do 2 full shows like that before we took a break to record more. And they're fierce. They're incredible. And it's a weird thing to say. And it's like, and it's not grandiose. I don't want to sound that way at all, because that band will always be incredible no matter how it's ran, however he decides to do it, and he's always going to find the right people, because that's the kind of music it is. You love it or you can't play it. And something clicked in me when I realized that this band's incredible. I know what I do. I know what I could do. Like I either learn the stuff and play it, I come up with stuff, whatever it is. And right now, I'm comfortable saying like it's time for me just to kind of back off a little bit and watch it still stay great.
That's cool.
There's never going to be jealousy or anything like that.
No, and that's like an emotional sobriety. That's kind of one of the gifts of the program too. It's like, you know, I'll speak for myself. I grew up in my 40s when I got sober. I was still super self-centered and childish, and I had the maturity of like a 15-year-old. And I had 2 mortgages and an ex-wife, and I've been able to grow up in public in a way. And that, you know, that's okay. And you did reinvent yourself a little bit, more grounded. You have an address. You own a studio now, correct?
Yes. That's stuff that I really love to do, and I like being a part of the process. I always enjoyed the making of records, and I'm trying to be now of service of that. You know, by no means do I think I'm any big time producer. Like I have all this. I'm just always a work in progress, always learning. I've had some great mentors. I mean, the band is really the biggest mentor, being around Jimmy, of course, for years. But recently I've done some, you know, mentorships with some other, you know, producers from California that I knew in LA, that just spending time. But this whole world of COVID in the remote thing spawned a whole new thing. So I was able to collaborate more with people on the West Coast, and just really shed the time and really learn. And I don't know exactly what it would become. I do really like being on that part of creating music with others and playing with a lot of people at this point. And it's just speaking to my soul right now. And again, it's only when I remind myself I'm of service to whoever I'm saying I'm going to work with you. We're going to work together. It's not like this kind of thing. It's like I'm here to do whatever's needed. And if I can help elevate your vision and deliver on what you hope for, then I'm doing the right job. Right. If not, then I'm trying to control something and my ego's in the way. And then I got to check myself. So being in recovery and then trying to get into this kind of production engineer thing is a really magical team. As long as I'm working my program really well, I could really work with an artist really well. And that's kind of where I'm at now. But I wouldn't, when you say now I might become somebody else, it's like, I think I wouldn't have been anybody like I am now if I wasn't all those years around Jimmy and the band. But now I'm able to use that experience and humility and just kind of just be the same person. I'm still static. I still play guitar a certain way, but there's other things I want to do, you know, or not, maybe I don't even know what I want to do, but I'm open to whatever happens. So I'm not locked into any ideas right now. I want to see what happens, but that's where I'm at now. Yeah, it's a studio. I call it the noise room, because someone said my playing was like noise early on. And I just laughed at it, and I ended up having a spacey underground improvisational band like that was random when I'd be home from tours called Static is Noise. It's my email address. Like I just kind of went off on it, like taking the criticism and just having fun with it. Yeah. And it's like with that and the working with road recovery and young people, I started to use the term when you bring young people around to play something. If you're not there to teach traditional lessons, I would say it's just kind of tribal. We just get together and make a beautiful noise together, because road recovery is not teaching anything. We're if anything, we're teaching life skills. We're sharing our experiences, letting people express themselves, lift the young people's voices, bring them in. And if it's only playing a few things on a bongo and a few notes on a piano, that's when we can look each other in the eye and make a beautiful noise together. Mm-hmm. So I kind of just play off on that. And it's just more about being honest. Music is raw. Music is one of the first things we have. People showed up on the planet. They needed to make more people. That was an instinct. We need more of us. We need to find food, shelter, and what would happen at the end of the night? Somebody that was a little more spiritually connected might have did something, and there was always somebody with drums in their voice there, and you kind of celebrate and dance. Music is one of the most natural, instinctual things we have. It's not a creation. It was never meant to be monetized. Yes, we're in a monetized type world. I would like to make money doing it, but I know for a fact I can't disrespect its original, like how it came about. It's collective. It's not
sacred. It's a sacred thing, and it connects us, right? Makes us feel connected. And what do they say about addiction? The opposite of addiction is connection, not sobriety. It's connection.
And why are all the sober people so connected to each other? Because we found connection. We're connected now.
We're connected through shared pain, right? Like we're not connected through anything, but like we suffered with this thing. We found a way to overcome it. And you know, the best thing about 12-step programs to me is it's not just a way to quit drinking and take substances out of my life. It's a design for a living.
It's exactly what it is. And they only really mention in most 12-step programs, they only mention in the beginning. That's the thing you give up. But from that point on, we're digging into ourselves.
Right.
Resentments and figuring out what makes us tick. And that's, and like you said, the misery connected us, but what keeps us connected is the solution. The shared thrill to keep working a solution and being there for each other. And I believe 12-step recovery, because it's a relation concept, there's no expert in the room, it's really for everybody. There's probably a version now for everybody. Whatever you think you're dealing with, and as an adversity, there's got to be a version for everybody at this point. And it sounds silly, but it's like, I wish everybody had, if they wanted it, I wish they just like gave it to you in school, like, you know. But I know it's not that simple, because there's a come to believe moment, and that's when we find this.
You're right. And it's like, sometimes I wish I could just take a little bit of what like I feel and put it in somebody else, so they go, oh, and then want more of it, like kind of the way I wanted more of it when I started to like, I remember one day I was like, I just love AA. I couldn't believe it.
But you're doing it. You are giving it to people, because if we carry ourselves in that attractive way that they say, if you're doing this right, you become attractive.
Right.
Then we are doing it. Because by the way we act often is how people may act back. And if they don't, they don't. They may be a little sicker, and then we just pray for them. Yeah. But we keep acting the right way, sooner or later, it comes around. You know, you ever spin someone's mood, the cranky person in the coffee shop, you're just like, no, really, I really want to know how you're doing today. How are you? And people just smile, and there's like, they pause for a second. They're just like, wow. Or just make them laugh, you know, if you have that ability, if you're funny, you know?
Right. No, it's great. It's magic, right? You change the whole world if you start doing that.
Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Well, dude, I'm like super grateful that you came on the show. I'm totally honored. I think that road recovery is great. And I'd like to do something with those guys if possible in the future. Maybe you'd offer a scholarship or something like that. I wish you all the luck in the world.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wish you the
Thanks a lot.
same, because you're doing such amazing stuff out there. Like it is so incredible. I can't wait to get back out, like traveling, and come visit you out in the Denver area and check out what you do.
I would love that, man. That would be great.
Awesome.
Well, thanks a lot. Thanks for being on the show, and we'll see you later.
Yeah, super happy to be here.
All right.